The sun was setting behind the mountains as the westbound train pulled away from Cedar Creek Station, leaving behind a cloud of steam and the lonely figure of a young woman sitting on her battered suitcase. Isabella Martinez clutched a crumpled letter in her hands, the formal rejection that had arrived just moments before the train's departure. Her intended husband had changed his mind, deciding that a Mexican bride was not suitable for his position in the community. Sheriff Thomas McKenna was making his evening rounds when he noticed the woman in the cream-colored traveling dress, her dark hair covered by a simple white veil that marked her as a mail-order bride. At 35, Thomas had seen enough heartbreak in this frontier town to recognize desperation when he encountered it. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Thomas asked, approaching with the careful respect he showed all women, regardless of their circumstances. Isabella looked up with tears in her dark eyes, clutching the rejection letter. "Sheriff, please, I need your help. I have traveled so far and I have nowhere to go. The man who was to marry me has refused to honor our arrangement." Thomas removed his hat, his weathered face showing genuine concern. "What happened, miss?" "I'm Isabella Martinez," she said, standing with as much dignity as she could muster. "I answered an advertisement from Mr. Jameson for a bride. We corresponded for months and he seemed pleased with my letters. But when I arrived, his associate informed me that my heritage makes me unsuitable for his social position." Thomas felt anger rise in his chest at the injustice of her situation. "Miss Martinez, that is unconscionable. No one should be abandoned after making such a journey based on promises made in good faith." "Sheriff," Isabella said, her voice growing desperate as she noticed the darkness gathering. "Please take me before the sun rises. I will cook, I will clean, I will not complain. I ask only for shelter and the chance to earn my keep honestly. I cannot return home with such shame, and I have no money for passage elsewhere." Thomas looked at this brave woman who was offering to work as a servant, rather than face the humiliation of returning home rejected. Her pride and dignity, even in desperate circumstances, spoke to something deep in his character. "Miss Martinez, you should not have to beg for basic human decency," Thomas said firmly. "Cedar Creek may be a rough town, but we do not abandon women in need." "I do not ask for charity," Isabella said quickly. "I am educated. I can read and write in both Spanish and English. I have taught children, and I can manage household accounts. I simply need someone to give me the chance to prove my worth through honest work." Thomas studied her face, seeing intelligence and determination alongside the fear. "Miss Martinez, I have a large house that has been empty too long since my wife passed 3 years ago. It could use the attention of someone who understands how to make a house feel like a home. If you are serious about honest work, I would be willing to offer you employment as my housekeeper." Isabella's eyes filled with tears of relief. "You would do this for a stranger, even knowing what others might say about harboring a woman who was rejected by another man?" "I would do this because it is right," Thomas replied simply, "and because anyone who judges you for circumstances beyond your control is not worth considering." As they walked toward Thomas's house in the gathering dusk, Isabella carrying her single suitcase and Thomas leading the way with a lantern, she felt something she had not experienced in months: hope. "Sheriff McKenna," she said quietly, "I promise you will not regret this kindness. I will work harder than any employee you have ever had." Thomas glanced at this woman who was determined to earn her place through dedication rather than expectation, and realized that what had started as an act of charity might actually be the answer to his own lonely existence. "Miss Martinez, I suspect that by offering you shelter, I am the one receiving the greater gift." Over the following weeks, Isabella transformed Thomas's house from a bachelor's neglected quarters into a warm, welcoming home. She cooked meals that filled the house with wonderful aromas, organized his papers with efficient precision, and brought a sense of life and purpose to rooms that had been empty for too long. More importantly, their evening conversations over dinner revealed a meeting of minds that neither had expected. Isabella's education and insights challenged Thomas's thinking, while his stories of frontier justice and community building fascinated her with their tales of men and women building civilization from wilderness. Isabella, Thomas said one evening, as they sat on his porch watching the stars. "I need to tell you something. When I offered you employment, it was out of duty and compassion. But somewhere along the way, this arrangement has become something much more meaningful to me." Isabella set down her sewing and looked at him with the direct gaze that had drawn him from their first meeting. "What are you saying, Thomas?" "I am saying that you have brought more joy and purpose to my life than I have felt since my wife died. I am saying that what began as charity has become partnership, and partnership has become something that feels very much like love." Isabella felt her heart race at his words. "Thomas, I came here as a rejected bride, desperate for any shelter. Are you certain you are not simply feeling obligated to care for someone you rescued?" Thomas reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her work-worn ones. "Isabella, I rescued a stranger in need, but you have rescued me from years of loneliness and purposelessness. If anyone is obligated here, it is me, to the woman who reminded me what it means to share life with someone extraordinary." 6 months later, Isabella Martinez became Isabella McKenna in a ceremony at the small church in Cedar Creek, with half the town in attendance to celebrate the sheriff's marriage to the remarkable woman who had won the respect of everyone who met her. "You know," Isabella said to Thomas as they danced at their wedding reception, "when I begged you to take me before the sun rose, I thought I was asking for employment. I had no idea I was actually asking for the chance to find where I truly belonged." Thomas smiled at his bride, remembering the desperate woman on the train platform who had become the center of his world. Sometimes the best marriages are not the ones that begin with romance, but the ones that begin with respect, grow through partnership, and bloom into love when two people discover they are better together than they ever were apart. Sometimes, the most important journeys end not at the destinations we planned, but at the places where we discover that home is not a location, but a person who sees our worth when the rest of the world has decided we have none.